Okay, so I just noticed that when I uploaded my last video, I uploaded them incorrectly. I uploaded the part 2 first, and then I deleted part, the part 2 from my camera, and then I started to try to upload part 1, and it was too long. It was 20 minutes, and I was trying to cut it in half and couldn't find a way to do that. I probably just talked too much. So what I'm going to try to do is just kind of like go right into it and not to take more than 15 minutes in doing so. And where I started on part 2 was basically trying to pump and pump at the same time every day in order to keep your supply. So I'm going to get to, that's like the 5th point she mentioned, so I'm going to get to that one, but of course I need to do the introduction of the video now too. So you possibly saw part 2, now you're kind of looking at part 1, or hopefully I'll have it posted and you'll be seeing part 1 and then part 2. So I wanted to make this video on going back to work while breastfeeding, and how you could successfully breastfeed exclusively or partial while still working, and working even full-time. And I had the example of a mother that worked full-time for 40 hours a week, and she also breastfed full-time. So she wrote a paper for me, and I looked it over, and I asked her to come and speak at the support group that I have that I had started for breastfeeding mothers. And so she came and she gave some excellent tips. I really liked the paper that she wrote. And in my previous video about feeding cues and knowing how, man, I'm sorry, my face is all red and it's horrible lighting, sorry. So in that video, I had mentioned that I didn't want to just, I wanted to do the video, I didn't want to just do it and speak from my memory. Most of my videos are that way. I just kind of am teaching what I know. I used to teach many classes, so it's just kind of all there. But the working while breastfeeding, there's a lot of tips, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. So I wanted to make sure that I followed this little outline for myself, and that way I can make sure I don't forget anything, and that you guys benefit fully from, you know, the information that I have to share with you. So again, part 2 started with the point number 5 that she mentions about trying to pump the same times every day, and I will explain that much further in part 2. So part 1, I'm going to start with under the subheading things you need. So the 3 things she mentions are breast pump, pump parts, and a place to pump. I'm going to say start a little bit sooner than that. Before you have the baby, it's good to make that decision if you think you're going to breastfeed while you go back to work. Now, it could change. You could decide to to breastfeed partially and go back to work, or you might decide that I want to exclusively breastfeed and go back to work, or you might decide not to do it at all. But if you are thinking that you would like to breastfeed and go back to work, it's important to speak with your employer to see how supportive they're going to be for you, and letting them know what you need as far as you know, a place to pump and the breaks that are needed to pump. So to start with, so after you've, you know, discussed that with your employer, you will want to then think about all the things that you're going to need. I'm trying to get out of this light. All the things that you're going to need in order to be successful. So, so the first thing she mentions is a breast pump. Now, I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm like turning it away from me, but I'm trying to put the cap back on my, sorry. Breast pump, they're not created equal. That's something I just wanted to mention right away. And so if you know that you are going to be doing a lot of pumping and maybe you're not even going to go back to work, and you're just watching this because you're interested in pumping, if you know you're going to be pumping a lot, you would really, and specifically if you're going to go back to work and pump, you need a very powerful, strong, good quality pump. And there's two that WIC and me, I worked for WIC, so there was two pumps that we would suggest, and that is the Medela breast pump and the Amita breast pump. Now, of the two, my favorite is the Medela, but both work just fine. Now, they are a little pricey, but I want to say probably like $300. And if you can get a coupon, that's great. And I do mention at the end of my part 2, because I forgot to mention it in part 1, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now anyway, is that WIC does offer breast pumps for exclusively breastfeeding mothers. And I kind of mentioned a little bit more at the end of part 2, so I'll let you look at that. So you definitely want a good pump. And we don't recommend buying used, because if you buy used, first of all, they're not made for multi-user pumps. So that means they're not, I don't want to say not powerful enough to use. They are, but it's not necessarily safe health-wise, I want to say, and they're also not meant to last very long. I think they're meant to last about 3 years, I want to say, because after about that time, you'll start losing suction power and things like that. And Medela does not, or Amita, none of them recommend using for multi-users. So if you are getting to a 3rd year and it's not working, they're not going to help you fix the pump. They're going to want you to buy a new one. So if you are comfortable, and maybe it's a family member or whatever, and you do end up buying used or getting a used one, just look at the time that it's how old it is, because that will tell you whether or not it's going to be good for you. So a good quality breast pump is very, very important. Pump parts. If it's possible, keeping extra parts at work is great, because not having to carry all that extra stuff, and if you forget something, then you don't have to worry, it's there. And then a place to pump. So you need a place that has a chair, at least a chair and an outlet. Preferably if you could get a sink as well, so that you can wash your parts. But as she mentions in her form, which I'm going to link below, if you don't have that, you can get a tub or a bucket and keep everything there, and some dish soap, and then wash it yourself and keep it in the tub at work, and then you don't have to worry about dragging it back and forth. So that's really, really important. Now, things that make life easier are, one of the things she mentions is water and healthy snacks to stay hydrated and keep your energy up. Yes, when you're breastfeeding or pumping, you are more hungry and it takes energy, so you want to have snacks available to you. So one mom said she kept granola bars or fruit all over the house, in the bathroom, in her car, in her purse, beside every chair, in her bedroom. That way she could just grab it and eat it whenever she's hungry, because a lot of times when you're breastfeeding, you don't get a chance to sit down and eat as much, and you want to have good, healthy snacks available to you, and drinking plenty of water just to keep your energy up, and not get dehydrated. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't make enough milk if you're dehydrated, but it can affect you and how you feel if you're not drinking enough. Okay, so then she also mentions a cooler or refrigerator. And then she mentions breast milk can be left at room temperature for several hours. So a cooler or refrigerator are not essential, and this is true. Breast milk can stay at room temperature for up to 6 to 8 hours. Now, of course, you would want to keep in mind where you're at. If it's hot, you would want to you wouldn't want to leave it out as long, because it just wouldn't be as good if it was out long. And that's just common sense. But it is true. If you choose to be on the safe side, you just bring a lunch bag with a freezer pack in it, put your bottles in, your milk, that's fine. It doesn't even have to sit in a refrigerator. Just in a lunch bag with the cooler pack and you're fine. It'll work for until you get home. So that's another point she brings out. And then a nice bag to carry back and forth to work is great. We all love bags, so something nice, something that makes you feel good, and you carry all your things in that, and that is really nice, especially if you have to carry everything back and forth. And then this is where she starts to talk about making sure to schedule the same times every day to pump. So at this point is where part 2 starts. So I'm going to go ahead and let us go from there. Let me see here though, because I know part 1 was 20 minutes and this is only almost 2 minutes. It feels like I must have talked a lot in the other one. So I guess that's really it until you get to part 2. And of course I will look over it. I may have to add a little bit to the end, but I believe everything is covered here. I know I talk about the one I deleted. I know I talked about that it is and I did this in the first one too. It is a law that your employer has to provide a place for you to pump that is not a bathroom. And also they are required to give you unpaid breaks. But, and I don't know if I mentioned this in part 2, and this is why I'm saying it now, so forgive me if I say it twice. But don't get too hung up over the unpaid break part, because if you get at least 3 breaks in an 8-hour period, so let's say you get 2 15-minute and a half an hour, what you can do is just make it 3 20 minutes. So you get 20 minutes in the, at one, 20 minutes in another, and 20 minutes at the other. That will give you your paid breaks, and then you're not worrying about anything else. I just remembered this is longer because I stopped it because I got interrupted and I started again. So I thought that was awful weird to have it only 2 minutes. So I just want to make that, don't, worry too much about the part about unpaid breaks. So I'm going to go ahead and end here, and hopefully part 2 picks up. Thank you. Bye, guys.